Business.
Hello, welcome to Leading the Way at Leonard's. I'm your host, Dwayne Knepper. Most commercial carriers in the U.S. are small businesses. And according to the Federal Motor Carrier Safety Administration, 92% of fleets operate 6 or fewer trucks, and 97% of those operate less than 20. Today, we'll be sharing tips to help small carriers remain competitive in this challenging economic environment. And as always, riding shotgun with me is Leonard's Express CEO, Ken Johnson.
Thanks, Dwayne. Good to be here again. We're excited to welcome two guests today that have a deep understanding of the challenges faced by small carriers and small fleets. Today, we have Greg Lefebre, who is the General Manager of Integrated Logistics and Associates, and Tom O'Donnell, our Vice President of Logistics for Leonard's Express.
Thank you. Great to be here.
Yep. Thanks for having us.
And thank you both. Greg, first tell us about integrated logistics and how your work supports small carriers.
Well, all we do is work with small carriers. We provide back office opportunities for them where we basically handle all their billing and collecting. And then we also finance their businesses through factoring, where we actually advance them money on their invoices so they can haul a load, deliver their paperwork to us, and then we take care of billing it out for them. At the same time, we advance money into their bank account so they can pay for fuel or their drivers or whatever expenses they have.
That's a big deal. Tom, is it widely believed that small fleets and owner-operators are the backbone of the industry, even though enterprise fleets steal most of the headlines? Can you talk about the role of small fleets on the front lines driving the American economy?
Yeah. I think small carriers do play a very, very important role in our industry. In my opinion, carriers that are smaller in size find their niche that fits their best business model in today's market. Whether it's dry freight, refrigerated freight, or maybe LTL or intermodal, it's my opinion that they need to stick to what is making them successful and sustain that business. Now, when saying that, it's easier said than done. Without a solid customer base and a solid driver base, it'll be tough to climb that hill to be successful. A few other factors that may also come into play as well are the lanes that are offered from their customers and the market they want to haul in to be profitable. As you alluded to earlier, 92% of the small trucking companies make up the industry. And these smaller carriers, as well as large carriers, all transport raw materials, finished goods, and they all deliver those finished goods to, retail stores, and obviously, they deliver fuel to fueling stations that we all depend on, and we're going to touch on that obviously later. And without these smaller sized carriers on the front lines, I do believe the economy would suffer.
Tom's right. The small carriers are really the backbone of the industry, and they make up the largest segment of the trucking industry. And even the big ones, the big carriers all started out as small carriers. Mm-hmm. My dad started KJ Transportation in 1972 with one truck, and he drove it, and then continued to build from that. And you see that, over and over again. Some stay small, some find their niche and stay in that lane. Others, grow to become, larger carriers. Leonard started out as a small fleet, primarily with independent contractors, and we still rely on independent contractors today. So, whether they're leased to a company like Leonard's or have their own authority and insurance, and work for a brokerage like our brokerage operation. And then, the services, that Greg provides by, fronting them the cash so they have the cash to operate. They rely on, companies like ours, to survive, and thrive. And, and they're the first ones to see the challenges when the price of fuel goes up. They're first one to see the challenges, when interest rates go up and they have to finance their equipment. They're the first ones to see and experience the driver shortages or, the equipment costs, so, they're going to be challenged more than the larger fleets are, at least quicker. And, and they see the ups and downs of the economy, and certainly, right now, there are challenges in the economy, and they're the ones feeling the pain from it.
Mhm.
Tom, we were mentioning fuel costs, and high fuel costs continue to bring pain to carriers of all sizes. How can small fleets remain profitable and make a decent living in this environment?
Well, the burdens of fuel costs can be obviously overwhelming for a small carrier or a large carrier. And some of the ways that combat those costs are make fuel efficiency at your company a high priority. We have that at Leonard's Express. We have our own department, watching that day to day, trying to find the best way to, coach, our driver advocates and coach our drivers on preferred fuel stops, to maintain our low costs. Um, Negotiate deals with your fleet, while your fuel providers are discounts to be had. I mean, that was one of the big things that I know, Kenny drove that, with our provider to get the best deals, right? Um, and other things that we can do is reduce idle time. That's very important. A truck should be off when not driving. All of our trucks, have auxiliary power units that kick on when the trucks are off and driving. This APU unit provides, energy to the truck when it's not on. That is very key, in my opinion. You can do tractor maintenance on a regular basis. PMs, you can maintain driver speed, maximize the drive miles driven to the truck. I mean, all those are wrapped into one, but fuel nowadays and the fuel costs going up are extremely important, to stay on top of that. And the initiative, like I mentioned earlier, that we have someone in place to be watching that and to coaching. And, it's really, really important that even the small carriers and large carriers, for the most part, do that.
Well, and not to interrupt, but you bring up a good point, Tom. And we're large enough where we can have people assign specific tasks at Leonard's with the size of our fleet. The small carriers with 1 truck or 5 truck or 10 trucks. The owner, is wearing many hats and taking on many responsibilities, and including in many cases driving the truck. So keeping track of all that and still finding time to do the important things, is a challenge. They have to juggle, many things in the air at the same time and keep track of it. And, Tom's points were all very valid, but imagine doing that if, for your own fleet, if you're the only one having to do all of that,
Right.
plus pay the drivers, find the freight, hire the drivers. There's a lot of responsibilities put on these small fleets and the owners of them.
Yeah, absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
Greg, finding and negotiating loads can be challenging for small carriers. What advice do you have for finding loads and negotiating competitive rates?
I think first and foremost, I think they need to do it themselves, to do it directly. And through that, they're going to develop relationships, with the freight brokers out there. I mean, there's thousands and thousands of freight brokers, but there's also, there's a list of the top 200 freight brokers in the country, published by Transport Topics, which is a great list because it actually shows the type of trucks that they're looking for, whether, some do flatbed, some don't. So I think that's important. I think talking to their peers, finding out, what companies not only pay well, but, pay timely and are easy to deal with. And I see too many people that are putting somebody in between them and actually paying someone to negotiate the rates for them and develop relationships. So they're not developing that relationship. And, they're the one out there, in most cases hauling the load if they're a small carrier. And I think it's really important that they're direct with the source so they know exactly what's going on. And then I think as they develop the relationship, I think they will find that, that the loads will pay more, and they will pay more to their liking. So,
Ken, driver retention and recruitment is something you're extremely passionate about. What trends are you seeing? Are there any encouraging signs for small fleets?
Yeah, sure. And one thing that I found over the years, is that everybody, and this isn't just for drivers, everybody has certain goals and desires and wishes in life. And, and as far as the driver goes, some work out fine working for the large mega carriers. Some prefer a mid-sized company that's got the size to support them, but still has, that family atmosphere. I would put Leonard's in that category. And then some, like working for a small fleet because, or even, an individual, just simply because, the relationships that they can build, with the other drivers and um, the owner of the company. So, you know, as far as recruiting and retention, obviously, as a growing company, Leonard's needs new drivers to continue to grow. And the best way to, bring new drivers in and have it be for growth is to retain the drivers you have. And I think we do a fairly good job here. There's always room for improvement, but it's a balance between pay, quality of life, lanes that they want to run, different operations. Home time, matters, it all comes together, and everybody has, maybe a little bit different priorities there, but, we try to put programs in place, to, meet the needs of all our drivers and keep them here. But, at the end of the day, some just don't fit. But overall, we're doing very well on the recruiting side. It seems that the last several months has, has been a little bit bigger orientation sizes, and we're maintaining a smaller empty truck count, than we had, maybe 6 months or a year ago. I think some of that's because, some of the things we've been doing over the last few years, one of which, of course, being one of the best fleets to work for in 2022, that award helped us on the recruiting side. There's no question about it. And, certainly very proud of that. But, you still have to do the work on the retention side. And, I think, one of the challenges right now with things maybe being a little bit slower in the industry and, the economy being a little more challenging is the drivers are very aware of that. And if they get any sense that they're sitting more than maybe they thought they used to, or maybe not getting the next load quite as quickly as, they're accustomed to, that's going to raise some red flags, and it's on us and any small fleet, that, is relying on drivers and, trying to keep their trucks filled to make sure that, they're talking, they're communicating, and trying to stay ahead, trying to make sure that, we're, a day or so ahead or more if possible, and having the freight available. So when a driver gets empty, we get his next load right over to them, so that they know what's going on and, they don't sense any slowdown and, creating any discomfort. And I think that's some of the reason why we're seeing, some success on the recruiting side is some of these other fleets aren't doing so well at that. And, and our drivers are our best recruiters, really, so if, we're keeping our guys busy, they're going to talk about that, with some, the drivers when they're getting lunch or at fuel stops and share how well we're doing. And, and that really helps us overall.
Yeah, I think great companies tend to find ways to keep great drivers, obviously, but there's plenty of freight to move, and certainly you read the media trends that there's a driver shortage out there, so it feels like you're trying to fish in the right pond, in the right ponds, and
Yeah.
obviously
Right.
sometimes the way to do that is with
Yeah, exactly.
the drivers that you keep.
Right. Dwayne, let me jump in there too. That what sets, Leonard's apart from everyone. We collaborate in between our departments to make sure that our assets, our drivers are moving, that they're not idling. We collaborate together to make sure that if we have a load on the brokerage side that would fit a driver sitting, and need to get him to a certain, spot in the country or maybe even home, we get that guy that load. There's no doubt about it. So we know that if these trucks are sitting, that's not a good thing. So we do everything we can here to make sure that driver has a load, like I said, going to where his next load is or going home if he needs to get home. So, that's it, again, the collaboration that here at Leonard's is, second to none.
Absolutely. Startup costs, they can be a significant barrier for small fleets and independent operators. Greg, what tips can you share for getting a small trucking business off the ground?
Well, obviously, you don't want to have too much overhead starting out. You don't want to go out and buy too much equipment. If you're newer to the business, maybe you want to start out with even maybe, we see some people start out with just a pickup truck and a small trailer behind it, work their way up to maybe a flatbed, then maybe a dry van, and then eventually a reefer. Obviously, used equipment is going to lower their costs to get into the marketplace. I think they need to have a factoring company or some kind of line of credit day one, because they're going to need it. It's an expensive business. So that's really some of the things that they need to look out for. Obviously, talk to their friends, talk to their peers. A lot of people are started through their families, and use their family connections. Lean on the resources that they have out there, their insurance agent, and their factoring company, even their bank, and make sure that they're ready for the challenges that are going to be coming their way, because any business these days is challenging, and trucking obviously has a lot of expenses, and some things you can control and some things you can't control. So but it's important to be well capitalized, or at least have capital available when you start a business.
Yeah, absolutely. You talk about the families. Leonard's is known to be a family company, and certainly when you look up from the desk, you see the different relationships. Family brings in the other family members as well, and I think that's what keeps things pretty tight knit around here as well.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
So, Greg, where can folks learn more about Integrated Logistics and Associates?
Our main website is integratedfactoring.com. We're also on Facebook, LinkedIn, but most of the information can be found right on integratedfactoring.com.
Awesome.
Or our phone number, it's 585-742-9030.
Thank you.
Give us a call there.
So, Greg, Tom, Ken, thank you so much for joining us today. Your advice for small carriers is extremely valuable.
Thanks. Yeah, it's they're an important part of our industry, and I think both on the logistics side at Leonard's with our freight brokerage that Tom oversees, and we do a great job there working with our carriers. We try to work with the good carriers, and develop relationships with them, because they're such a important part of our company. And as far as integrated goes, one of the reasons we started it integrated, and and Greg's done a wonderful job building that company, but we had to deal with factoring companies at Leonard's through the carriers that we worked with, and we felt that we could do a better job for the carriers, and build better relationships. We could see the way that the customers were being treated by the factoring companies, and although we're far from the size of the largest factoring companies, I think Greg and his team has done a wonderful job of building relationships with their carriers. They get recommendations and thank you notes from them all the time, and certainly proud of everything that they've done, and we'll continue to grow that company based off our reputation, and and couldn't be happier with what that the way that's turned out.
Awesome. Well, I think that's a wrap for this edition of Leading the Way at Leonard's. If you have questions or feedback, excuse me, we'd love to hear from you at leadingtheway@leonardsexpress.com. That's leading the way, all one word, at leonardsexpress.com. And please don't forget to like, follow, and subscribe to this podcast. I'm your host, Dwayne Knepper. Until next time, keep on trucking.